So my grandmother was very connected to nature. She, in winter, could tell what a tree was just from the shape of it with no leaves, and she knew all the names of animals and could tell, all the wildlife from their sights and sounds and their footprints. But I'm a city dweller, and I have lost this knowledge and this art. But around the beginning of the pandemic, I found that I began to notice birds, like a lot. I noticed birds a lot. Their voices were sort of everywhere, and sometimes I would hear and even feel their wings when they flew past me, and there were no planes, and the dawn chorus was deafening, and I became rather obsessed about this, and I thought, if I can get to grips with my more tightly circumscribed space, and if I can get to know the creatures that live in my own little patch of the world, then maybe, even if I never get to go anywhere ever again, I can somehow manage to be happy. So I got this birdsong app where you listen to a little snatch of song, and then you have a multiple choice of 4 options, and you match the bird with its song. And I had a meteoric rise to becoming the nation's second best identifier of birdsong, a position that I think I still hold, qualifier on the app, because I remain persistently, stubbornly unable to identify any birds in the wild. Perhaps because nature is more variable than the app, but also there's no multiple choice option. But people started to, perhaps not unsurprisingly, mock me for my preoccupation with birds, and they called me a twitcher. And I said, I'm not a twitcher. Twitchers are the train spotters of the field. They're the geeks of the forest. That's not me. I'm not a twitcher. I'm interested in birds and their social, historical context. I'm interested in the psychology of why we're noticing birds in the pandemic. I'm interested in the folklore and myths that surround all these birds, because here we are. We're also terrified. We don't know what's going to happen. And for thousands of years, humans have used birds to divine their fates. This is what I'm about. I'm not a twitcher, but still they snickered, and I received binoculars for Christmas. But actually, this is all very jolly, but as the pandemic wore on and there was the 3rd lockdown, I found myself feeling really terrible. My mood was really terrible, and my creativity suffered, and I wasn't able to write. I wasn't able to write a word. I wasn't able to be productive at anything, and I would take these early morning walks trying to shake it off, and the crows would be out, and they would be pecking holes in the iced-over puddles in the playing fields near where I lived, looking for water, and I would look at them, and they're supposed to be symbols of transformation and change, but I didn't feel anything was changing for me, and I still couldn't write. And I told people that as soon as the restrictions lifted, I was going to get an Airbnb far from here, and I was going to get my creative juices flowing again. And people suspected that I was just going somewhere different to see some different birds. But anyway, I went. And the retreat was very rural, and actually I was more productive than I had been. In 2 days, I was more productive than I'd been in the whole of the pandemic, and I was elated. And I decided to treat myself by borrowing one of the bikes that was available and going out on a bike ride at dusk to go see if I could see snowy owls hunting in the fields at a place where I'd been told that they were. But you had to ride on country roads, and they don't have a line down the middle of them. I don't like roads with a line down the middle of them. When nothing's gonna, you don't know what's coming at you. It seemed too risky, so instead I pedaled onto a sort of a tractor track between the fields. It was a Sunday evening, and there was nobody around. And I was pretty convinced I wasn't going to see another human on this ride. There was no evidence of anyone around. But then suddenly I spotted him. He was up there ahead on a wooden footbridge, training his binoculars on the river. He was a big guy in a knitted stocking cap, and I was alone, and I felt kind of nervous in a way. I couldn't pass him. It was too narrow for that, so I stopped and apologized, and he looked startled. I asked what he was looking at, and he said, I heard there was a kingfisher here yesterday. And I said, and I thought, oh, this could be a twitcher's conversation. I'm not a twitcher. So I said, a kingfisher. I said, oh my God, kingfisher. So I said, that blue, that azure blue and the orange, I can't believe that it's almost like not real. And I said, and then I thought, well, if I were a twitcher, I might say, is that an Opticron 5000 that you've got there? But I didn't. This was not going to be a twitcher's conversation. So instead I said, I love the ancient Greek legend of the kingfisher. Do you know it? And he said again, I heard there was a kingfisher here yesterday. And I realized we weren't going to have a conversation. I said, see, I am not a twitcher. This is not my tribe. I rode away. He doesn't care about the legend of the kingfisher. He doesn't care about Halcyone, who angered Zeus and Hera by calling she and her husband were so in love. They thought, oh, we're like the gods. Let's call each other by the names of the gods, which pissed the gods off. So the husband was killed in a shipwreck that was organized by Zeus. But they took compassion on Halcyone, and they turned her into a kingfisher so she could fly back and forth along the water's edge. And in a further act of compassion, they calmed the seas for periods of time so that she could lay her eggs in peace. But he didn't care about that. He was Twitcher, and I was of a different stripe. I took my ride, and I came back, and I saw the Twitcher on the path again, and I asked, have you seen him? Have you seen the kingfisher? And he said no, and I thought, okay, no kingfisher today. And I was riding, and I heard the wrens in the hedgerows, and I was swerved to get a closer hearing of these wrens. I caught my hand on a bramble, and I smashed to the ground. And the sliding of the tires prevented me from hearing the ligament pop and snap in my knee. But thank God this guy was here. He might not be of my tribe, but he was there, and he was my savior and my rescuer, and I looked at him, and I waved, and I made eye contact. Thank God. I mean, not thank God I crashed, but thank God I crashed within the sight of the only human for miles around. And slowly he turned away, and he walked away from me on the trail, and I was writhing and flailing in pain on the ground, and there was a bike on top of me, and he walked away, literally strolling into the sunset. And I looked at the sky from the dirt, and I thought, the next bird that I see will be a foreteller of my fate. It could be a robin. It could be my grandmother, like in this form of a robin coming to give me compassion and courage and persistence. It could be a goldfinch, which is what appears when the dead soul leaves the body. Let's hope not. Or it could be a kingfisher with its message of forgiveness and hope. And just then, as I was lying in the dirt and I looked towards the river, I saw it azure blue and a brilliant flash of orange underneath.